Okay, one of the companies that we jumped into in a big way, and it was right following Snowline's discovery at Valley, was Rackla. Okay, and it's based on the premise that the Tombstone Belt up here in the Yukon and even on into Northwest Territories, that this belt is going to be a prolific region of gold discovery for the next generation of gold mines. Like this is ground zero for discovery. In my view, this gold cycle is going to be partly underpinned by the discoveries that are made in this region. I talked about a lot of companies. I talked about Sitka, I believe, last week. Wonderful story. A lot of time people come to me and they say, well, you didn't talk about, Sitka today. Well, do you not like Sitka anymore? And no, that's not how it works. I talk about companies that have news. Okay. So I love Sitka and I love Rackla, and Rackla happened to have news this week. All right. So I'm able to talk about it. Okay. And what Rackla is looking for is one of these reduced intrusion type gold systems, much like Snowline has at Valley. Okay, now in this map, you can see that they are further to the east from Snowline's area. Snowline is over there at Rogue. But we are over here in what's called the Astro-Plutonic Complex. Sounds like what kind of name is that? I don't know. Some geologist came up with. But it's basically a large granite mass buried in the ground where these intrusions rose up from it, and they created gold deposits in many cases. Okay, so our buddies here at Rackla have managed to secure a commanding land position over this Astro-Plutonic complex, and they announced some targets that they've developed with data they collected late last year that are killer. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so we are at what's called the Kelvin stock. So basically, this is an intrusive that's expressed here in geophysics. You can see magnetics in this case, and oftentimes these intrusions have low magnetism, which in this case shows up as blue. They often have a halo around them where they've cooked up the rocks and they've created highly magnetic rocks as a over the roof of them, over the top, and sometimes are on the margin. Okay, so the big pink areas that you see are basically highly magnetized rocks that are a product of getting cooked up by the intrusion. Okay, but they've defined a target here at this Kelvin stock, or I should say targets, including Peak, which we've talked about, but also this Cirque target that I think are absolutely killer. They have every single ingredient that we saw at Valley in the early days. Okay, so this is a story where the company could go out, drill this year, and make a major gold discovery. And I truly hope this data is telling us such. Go to the next slide. Okay, so here you can see the mapped extent of that intrusion. It's basically the red thing there. Okay, but you have these areas around it where there is very strong gold, but also trace elements that one would expect with gold in this kind of system, particularly bismuth. Sometimes you see tellurium too, okay, but in this case, bismuth. And these guys did a lot of work there last year that generated some wonderful targets. Okay, the Peak target is over here on the fringe. It's on the margin of the intrusion. But if you think in 3D, that intrusion probably dives underneath Peak. Okay, so the fact that they found a lot of rock samples at surface that are high grade, as well as get a lot of soils that are telling us there's a lot of gold there, that might be telling us that there's an intrusion underneath Peak that could prove to be like a valley type target. So there's one target. The second one that I think is just killer is this Cirque target. Okay, what is a Cirque? Well, when a glacier scours out a mountain, it usually leaves bowl-shaped valleys up at the head of the glacier that we call cirques, literally cirques, like circle. I think it's a Swiss word. But that cirque is often filled with glacial stuff like till and stuff like left behind by the glacier. So you can't sample down in the bottom of the cirque, but you can sample along the margin. Okay. And what these guys did is they did soils around the margin of that cirque, and they're lighting up like you wouldn't believe. I mean, look at these numbers. These are crazy. These are very strong gold numbers in the silts and soils around the margin of that cirque. It's well within the intrusion, guys. Okay. In my view, that's telling us there's a lot of gold shedding from that intrusion. And hopefully that means we have a sheeted vein complex. And I think, I think what they're trying to express here with the black lines, the little thin black lines, is that they see the sheeted veins. Okay. So this is code word for holy moly, this could be another valley. Okay. I woke up when I saw this target and everybody else did, and everybody's super excited about it. And it could be one of the most exciting drill stories in the Yukon this year. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, Fathom nickel. Now, nickel hasn't seen the big burst that gold has and stuff, but it is moving up. It's moving up. Okay, it's kind of hit its low and it's starting to move up. And we do have some nickel stories in our portfolio, and one of them is Fathom. Now, Fathom managed to raise some cash. It was very, challenging back in December to raise cash, but they managed to raise, I think, like $4 million or so, and that gave them the budget to go out and drill. Now they drilled Albert Lake, which is one of their targets, a few weeks ago, and now they're drilling at Gawkager Lake, which is another nickel target to the south of Albert Lake. Equally intriguing. And guess what? They took all that data they had previously, all that drilling and geophysics, the downhole geophysics, seeing the conductors off the margin of their drill holes and stuff, and they've been very successful at hitting sulfide intercepts. I think every single hole that they have in this news release, all four of them ish, hit pretty good intervals of sulfide. And the market reacted like this was no news at all. And it is baffling to me. I mean, this is crazy because I see this as really good. I see those sulfides, those kind of brassy looking sulfides there, is very prospective, very promising. In places, they're almost massive, like they're almost solid sulfide. And this is telling me that they're onto something. Okay. Have they made the big discovery yet? I don't know, but they're pretty close to hitting something here, in my view. Let's go to the next slide. Now, I asked the one really nice thing about working with some of these companies is there's people that are very responsive, and Doug and Ian are very responsive. And I asked Ian to tell me how I can help tell this story. Okay, this is a bit of a techno dive, but I think it should, if I walk people through it, it should show you what the heck is going on here. Okay, now, first of all, the image right in the middle, I want you to fixate on that. The blobbies of light orange and darker orange are basically our nickel mineralization. It's kind of a halo of low grade with some high grade within that. And in places, it's very high grade. Look at look at hole 3 there, 23003. What is it? That's oh my goodness, I can't read the numbers. 58 meters of 1.49% nickel. Okay, that's a wonderful intercept. There was higher grade within that, 18 meters of 2.43. Okay, so we know there's a blob of high grade up near the surface. And see that gray thing that's kind of in 3D that's projecting through that? That's our conductor. Okay, that is how well the conductors, when you do the downhole geophysics, and you can see that, that's how well they're expressed. Like you can pretty much nail it. If you have one of those plates, those conductors that is defined by the geophysicist, you can drill across it and hit, at least in this deposit, with very high probability. Okay, that's encouraging. Now, that conductor is open along strike. Okay, the fact that it's just drawn as a little rectangle right there, no, it's open along strike. Okay, so we know the thing has strike continuation. All right, but we also see down at depth, the company tested some of the deeper conductors. Okay, they saw them down there with geophysics they did last year, and they came back and they drilled some holes across, very carefully crossing those plates. And guess what? They see sulfide. I mean, holy cow, that is wonderful, proof of concept there. Okay, now again, those rectangles are not closed off, guys. They continue along strike. Okay, so rather than kind of walk you through all that verbiage on the left-hand side there, my point is they are seeing more and more sulfide, and very successfully with the geophysics they've done, chase this thing. Okay, now what they need to do is they need to chase it along strike. It is nearly vertical, the whole system, but they should chase this thing along strike. And as they drill more holes and get more data, they can start to see those conductors expand. And at some point, I'm very confident these guys are going to hit something big. Okay, I really think that they could nail it. All right, so that's the story. So the news that came out this week, in my view, is very good. Okay, next slide. Okay, Brixton had a news release in fact, I think it was last night. And the news was actually out of Ivanhoe Electric, who are earning into the Hog Heaven project in Montana. And Ivanhoe, as part of their earning, they chip away at this thing. They drill some holes here and there, and now and again, and they've kind of fixated up in that northern area. You can see over here in the map on the right, in that little tiny box, they fixated in that particular area. It's not to say the rest of that geophysical expression isn't prospective. Okay, that's conductivity, by the way. This is not magnetics, but it's basically measuring conductive rocks that would be likely associated with a big porphyry, epithermal system of some sort. But they keep hitting better and better results. Now, one of the measures I have for a project, if we see successively better and better and better results, usually those are the projects that end up leading to discovery. Okay, think about it. If you it's just like Fathom. Okay, if you kind of take the data you have and then get smart and then drill some more holes and you see better results and then interpret again, eventually that will lead to a discovery. And I think that's the path they're on to here. Now, what did they hit? Well, they hit 82 meters, 0.63% copper, 0.32 gram gold, and 38 grams silver in one of the drill holes. All right. Now, you might say, well, that's okay. It's not huge interval, but it's better than anything that's been hit so far. So it tells me that they're getting smarter and smarter, and they're starting to see where this thing's going. Go to the next slide. Here you can see a long section through, this is like looking at a slice through the ground, right? We're looking at all the drill holes from the side. Notice there's some drill holes in blue that are assays pending, so we should wait for more news here. But, all of these holes have hit mineralization. At this most recent one, this intercept that was just announced, which over here in the chart, I believe is hole 14. Yeah, hole 14. Hit pretty good run. Look at all those numbers. You got, that's not bad. Copper equivalent, that's 1.22%, by the way. That's okay. Now, notice they also have some interesting results in the other holes, okay? And, hole 11, which I think was a ways back, I can't remember when it came out, but it hit 210 meters of almost 0.6% copper equivalent, okay? So there's a big system here, guys, and they've really only tested a narrow scope on this thing, but I think as they expand, they're going to see something interesting turn up. And one of the things that really has me intrigued, and this is kind of going into geo nerd land, okay, is the style of mineralization. Okay, that photograph over here in the lower right corner is of some of the mineralization they've hit in hole 14. It's some of that higher grade stuff. And it happens to be sulfides with a mineral called enargite, which is a copper arsenic sulfide. All right, but it's typical of high sulfidation systems. And I'll be darned, like when I see that, I'm thinking, man, imagine if they hit about 100 meters or something like that. You can go back to the chart there. The highest assay in that hole is at 9.65%. It's 3.9 meters of 9.65% copper equivalent. Okay, so they hit a little taste of something in there that's very high grade, like super interesting. Okay, that reminds me, and no guarantees, but it reminds me of what I saw out of Reservoir. Thank you. Just popped in my brain. Reservoir in Serbia back in 2013, I think, when they found I can't remember the name of it now, whatever it was. It was a big high grade, basically high sulfidation system at depth, a blind system. Guys, I take note of this. I look at the geology. This is the attention we give to stories like this. I'm sticking with this one. If they hit a reservoir type discovery here, and I cannot think of that. It's next to the Bohr mine. I can't think of the deposit name. Anyway, this could rock and roll. This could be a major, major discovery. Okay, go to the next slide. We got to get our skates on. I just realized. Okay, Newfound. This is the least astonishing news release I've ever seen in my lifetime. Okay, why? Because it's the metallurgy from Newfound. Okay, now the company has been drilling for 3 years or so, I think. And every news release they put out, they have wonderful pictures of core with visible gold. When you see visible gold, and look, I got to do a recap of metallurgy for folks sometime, okay? But when you see visible gold in the core, that means it's free. It's not bound up in sulfide or some other weird thing. It can be liberated very easily, and we knew this from day one. Okay, I used to be a director, and I was like, okay, the metallurgy should be pretty good here. Okay, and guess what? They've done the work now to show it pretty good. Like 90 to 96% recoveries. You can see over here on this table, it looks very confusing, but basically what they did, okay, is they took these samples, they took pieces of core over long intervals and made composite samples. And then they tested material from different areas and they ground it at different sizes. So 212 micron, it's kind of like coarse sand, 75 micron, it's pretty fine sand, and 53 micron, like really fine sand. And by the way, this metallurgy program was developed by Gary Simmons, who was the former chief metallurgist in Newmont. He was there when I was there, so I know Gary quite well, one of the smartest guys on the planet. He developed a scheme to see if they could liberate the gold at fine particle size, but also at coarse particle size. Why? Because if you can grind the rock to a coarse particle size, it saves a lot of energy. Okay, saves a hell of a lot, or heck of a lot of energy, and that means cheaper cost of processing. Okay, and guess what? If you look at the recoveries here, the gravity concentrate extraction, that tells you how much of the gold they captured just in a gravity concentrate. This is like putting it through a Nelson or something like this. Most of the gold comes straight out into that concentrate. Most of the gold, and that's to be expected. It's a coarse gold deposit. Okay, but then they took the tailings from the coarse gold extraction and they put it through CIL, which is carbon in leach. It's basically a cyanide leach, digestion to capture the rest of the gold. And they were able to capture the rest of the gold, ending up in a weighted overall extraction. That third column from the right, that's your extraction. Now, here's the interesting part. Even at 212 microns, they're getting about as good a recovery across the board here as they do at 75 microns or 53 microns. What does it mean? It means they could probably do a fairly coarse grind here and get good recoveries. That means cheap processing, guys. And it's not refractory. It's very free milling. You should get very good recoveries. This is a wonderful deposit. This kind of information, when it gets out and gets into the hands of major mining companies take note. They say, wow, that thing, they can start, playing with numbers. They can say, oh, it's going to cost X amount to process this rock, and it gives them the data they need to start getting more interested in acquiring this project. Okay, so this is essential stuff. It's also essential for retail investors to learn as much as possible about metallurgy because it's really the most important aspect of any discovery. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Nevada King had some results. They are off to the northwest from the pit. In this image here, you can see the pit boundary with the little hatchers. It's off to the northwest in an area that's seen some drilling, but it's targeting some high grade. And one of the things they've learned here is that there's certain structures that apparently fed the fluids or whatever, they generate high grade results. And in this case, they got 4.51 gram per ton gold over 86 meters and 7.77 gram over 43 meters. Holy guacamole. Those are killer results. It's all oxide, meaning it's going to be readily cyanide leachable, la, la, la. This is wonderful stuff. Okay, let's look at it in cross-section. Next slide. Sorry. There we go. So you can see we're looking through a pretty wide swath of drill holes, but you can see they've got some near vertical structures there where they've hit these high grades. And the company has literally, tuned in to identify those. Why? Because if you drill those areas and you hit high grade, you can better assess in your resource estimate how much influence that high grade has. When you're doing a model, if you can understand where that high grade is and where most of the gold is, quite frankly, all the better. Okay, because it means your model is going to be better and it's likely going to generate a lot more gold for you. So yes, these are great numbers. They're infill, but they're very meaningful. Go to the next slide. Last story today, Red Pine. This is a story, it's puttering along. They do have some money in the bank from what I understand because they raised some last year. But they hit 4.53 meters over 11.5, gram per ton gold over 11.5 meters. Not a huge hit, but it does infill an area along the main part of this deposit. Now, this company is going through an experience that a lot of junior companies go through in a really down market. Okay, sometimes people get very fatigued running a company. And look, Quinton is a great guy and stuff, and wish him well. But he decided to hang up his spurs, and they're out there, looking for a new boss for the company. And just listening to the rumor mill, I think they're going to find some really nice, strong technical folks to come in and likely fill those shoes. Okay, so that's going to be an important part of the kind of rejuvenation of some of these companies too. Seeing some new management come into some of these companies that have been beat up and have value, but they just need the right hand at the helm, right? So